In all, so we've got peace apparently. Donald Trump says he's made a major breakthrough, spoke with Putin, talked to him for some time, then they had the aids in, and um, and he said it was brilliant. He said it was a 10 out of 10 meeting. In reality, it's very difficult, like the deerstalker hat. You do, I've got it here. Sherlock Holmes hat. Got a pipe as well. Might start using these. Anyway, so what's happened with the thing? We'll go through some of the live feed in a moment. What's essentially happened is Putin's delighted. I mean, think about what Putin got out of it. He's first of all, he's not being treated like an international pariah like he should. He didn't just get a meeting with the US president. He got the red carpet treatment. Do you see that? They rolled out the red carpet for him. VIP. I mean, that's not standard. That is not standard protocol for a world leader. That is a super important honoured guest type reception. That. Then you've got... So Putin's worried because Trump does have something over Putin, and he would have been worried about that. And that is the threat of sanctions. Because although he's claiming that he's fine with it and he tries to brush it off and he's all leery about it, Russia's economy is not in good shape. Militarily, he thinks he can outlast Ukraine, right? He thinks because Ukraine is essentially on its own, yes, it's been supplied, but it's not being supplied with, it's not being supported with other militaries. No one's supporting it. So Ukraine has its own military, and that is the only military opposing Russia. They are being supplied with some equipment. It's not like they are literally left on their own, but they're not being supported in battle. So Putin thinks like the standard Russian thing going back centuries, right, is they just throw bodies into the meat grinder until they win. That has been the Russian military strategy for like at least 200 or 300 years. Just keep throwing bodies at them. So Putin thinks militarily he can keep doing that. And they are making gains. I mean, sometimes you hear about, some triumph of Ukraine. It's fine, but slowly Russia are making gains in some areas, right? So really, the economic pressure is what, if you're not prepared to support Ukraine in battle directly, then economic sanctions are the only way to go. Trump held that over Putin. So Putin came and he wanted to make sure he's not going to face those sanctions. Trump went into that meeting promising those sanctions. If he didn't get anything, he didn't get anything, but he's agreed to a further delay on the sanctions. So do you know what? Putin's got exactly what he wanted. He's got to be treated like an honoured guest, treated like an equal. Did you notice as well, for those who watched it, the press conference, wasn't much of a press conference, did you notice that Putin spoke first? That's not normal protocol. The host speaks first. So sometimes it's just the case of the most important person speaks first. Trump should have been speaking first. He should have opened up that press conference, didn't. Someone's mentioned there about the fact that Trump didn't look particularly happy after the meeting as to whether Putin has reminded him that he's got the goods on him regarding Epstein, which will be more than the client list, by the way. There is a suggestion from a former head of intelligence in this country that he's got tapes, that Putin's got tapes. So there may well be something in that. I keep saying I honestly can't understand why Trump cares. Honestly, what can Trump have possibly done with Epstein that would be awkward for Trump to explain away? He'd just call it fake news, wouldn't he? But, you look at this picture and you look at that and you look at the body language there. His shoulders are slumped. Look at his face. And you think to yourself, look, anyone, you've got photographers there. They're snapping away 20 shots a second, right? They're going to catch you in unflattering poses, right? In an unguarded moment, you're going to be caught with a resting bitch face. You know, everyone's going to get caught with unflattering poses. It happens all the time. But, well, someone's there saying child molestation. He on television sat next to his teenage daughter, said he'd like to bang her. How can anything be worse than that? Anyway, what I'm going to point out about this photo is, so he's shaking hands, right, with Vlad. That means that's for the photo. That's for the photos. The press are assembled. Your handshake is for the cameras. Yeah, they can shake hands privately, but that's for the cameras. So that's Trump putting on his pose for the cameras. And, I mean, his face looks fed up. His shoulders are slumped. Putin stood up straight. He's smiling. I mean, the body language tells a story. You saw a similar thing. If you look up the photos of their meeting in 2018 in Helsinki, you saw the same thing. Trump is the junior partner in this arrangement. You know, Putin's got him, you know, wrapped around his bloody finger, hasn't he? But another thing I wanted to, before we go over some little things here, Adam just said, Trump has balls, I'll give him that, just a shame they belong to Putin, they're bouncing off his chin. Well, oh dear, don't want that image, thank you very much. But, so, what Trump needed to get, what he was supposed to get, right, was some concessions from Putin. Our hopes weren't high, if we're honest. In fact, the best hope, I think I said, was that nothing happens. Trump comes away from it saying, yeah, that didn't really work out. But now he's saying, oh, it's all down to Zelenskyy. What's down to Zelenskyy? What is down to Zelenskyy? So now they're supposed to be meeting in Washington. European leaders are now, fortunately, I think the best thing we can say about this, I don't think Trump has said anything too committal. And we know what Putin did. I mean, Putin buttered him up. He flattered him, right? Like, you know, Trump was saying during his press conference, oh, one of the most interesting things he said is the reason, referring to the US presidential election in 2020 that Biden won. Oh, he said that Putin told him the reason why that election was fiddled was because of mail-in voting. Like, no other country has mail-in voting. It's like, yeah, every other country has mail-in voting. Every proper democracy on earth has mail-in voting, mate. But, as far as I know anyway. But there we go. Anyway, let's... oh, yeah, that was it. So, concessions. What concessions did they get? Right, here's it. Here's one. Here's one. Here's a concession Trump apparently got. So, Putin, right, has agreed this. Okay. Ukraine, whatever's left of it, right, will be allowed to teach Ukrainian in their schools. So Putin has said, and this is like a concession apparently, this is something Putin didn't want, but he said, you know, I'll give, you know, give and take. So in return for Zelenskyy handing over a load of Ukrainian territory that's not his, Putin has said, we'll let you speak your own language in your own bloody country. It's ridiculous. Anyway, let's have a look at some things that have come up in the live feed. So, European leaders, we'll look at their comment. So this is the joint statement from Ursula von der Leyen, Emmanuel Macron, Giorgia Meloni, Friedrich Merz, Keir Starmer, Alexander Stubb, Donald Tusk, Antonio Costa. So they have said the next step must now be further talks, including President Zelenskyy. I mean, one thing they got Trump to agree, at least before the meeting, was that there can't be a peace deal. I mean, because that's what he wants now. Trump said, oh, yeah, okay, no ceasefire, just a peace deal. But it's like, so you're going to negotiate the peace agreement without a ceasefire. Do you know what a ceasefire is, mate? This is the problem with Trump as well. He's got no strategic understanding of anything. So Putin says things to him in Trump's head. All he wants is peace, right? He just wants, not for people's benefit, but just to get trade working again. Not that he seems a big thing on trade with all his tariffs, but nonetheless, that's why he wants peace, because it's more profitable. So he's just thinking, well, you know, we'll skip the ceasefire and go straight to the peace deal. But how do you get a peace deal without... The whole point of a ceasefire, the definition of a ceasefire, is you a pause in fighting so you can negotiate a peace agreement. Like, how do you negotiate a peace agreement when fighting's still ongoing, because fighting generates bad blood on both sides. You know, when Russia kills a load of Ukrainians, Ukraine are in a bad mood for those talks. When Ukraine bombs some Russian airfield or something, because they're not killing Russian civilians, they're not targeting Russian civilians. So when they bomb an airfield or something, or a missile launch site, or you know, some oligarch's garden or something, then Russia's pissed off, because that's an affront to their sovereignty or something, right? So absolutely ridiculous. But then there was this said. So Starmer's statement, you can see what's going on here. The Europeans are desperate to try and get Trump back on side. So again, flattering the crap out of him. So here's Starmer's statement. He said, President Trump's effort has brought us closer than ever before to ending Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. His leadership in pursuit of an end to the killing should be commended. While progress has been made, the next step must be further talks involving President Zelenskyy. The path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without him. This morning I spoke to President Zelenskyy, President Trump and other European partners. So Trump did do a debrief with European leaders after his meeting with Putin. As part to provide, sorry, hang on, where was I? And we all stand ready to support this next phase. I welcome the openness of the United States alongside Europe to provide robust security guarantees to Ukraine as part of any deal. Now, I will say, Giorgia Meloni, she seemed to think that Trump was suggesting the US will be involved in security guarantees. We will see. In the meantime, I welcome the blah, blah, blah. This is important progress and will be crucial in deterring Putin from coming back for more. More on that in a moment. In the meantime, until he stops his barbaric assault, we will keep tightening the screws on his war machine with ever more sanctions which have already had a punishing impact on the Russian economy and its people. Our unwavering support for Ukraine will continue as long as it lasts. SVAX then said we don't have postal voting in Ukraine. I think people won't trust its integrity yet. Okay, so, well, let's just say, like, countries that have had a robust democracy for some time then. Because at the end of the day, if you want people to take part in an election, you have to make it easy. Some people, you know, there's any number of reasons why going out to a physical polling station is not easy, particularly in the UK, where we don't even do it at a weekend. It's for one day on a Thursday, right? So you're most of the way through the week, so you're a bit knackered after you get home from work. I hate this thing. I hate AI at the moment. I don't completely hate it. I just mostly hate it. So, yeah, we have it on a Thursday for one day. Some countries have it over multiple days and, you know, at a weekend. So if you're disabled or you're in work, you do full day's work, you're less likely to be able to make it to a physical polling station. So you need postal voting. Ironically, a lot of elderly people, even though they would probably have the time, pensioners would have the time. But again, you know, a lot of pensioners may find the journey difficult, you know. So there's lots of reasons for that. Up your volume. Oh, sorry, I can't. It's upped to the max. I will just say on the volume thing, I mean, what I will say is I've got a number of very, very high quality microphones. I've got a high quality condenser. I've got a high quality box it all goes into. And I cannot tell you what the issue is. It's something to do with the computer. Got to be something to do with the computer. Because it's not like I've been streaming for 10 years. I've not had these issues for 10 years. Honestly, top quality equipment. It's upped, absolutely, gains up to the max. Everything. This is it. This is it. I can move the mic closer to my head. But that's about it, I'm afraid. Anyway, carry on, because there was something else I wanted to pick up on. Where did I see it now? Again, Europe. Oh no, it's probably on the first page. European leaders basically saying they're not going to sign up to anything Putin hasn't agreed. That's not going to be too remarkable there. Obviously, Ukrainians are not at all happy. Senior Downing Street source tells BBC that if any ceasefire is going to be a peace deal, It needs to include security agreements. Because what Putin wants, by the way, he wants Zelensky in return for this peace agreement or ceasefire, whatever the hell he wants to call it. Because we all know there's no peace deal. Putin's not going to agree to a peace deal. I mean, if he does, it won't really be a peace deal. It'll just be a rearming phase for him. And he wants Zelensky to give up the Donbass area. But the thing is, Russia doesn't control it yet. Not all of it anyway. So basically what Putin wants Zelensky to do is to withdraw Ukrainian forces from Ukraine, from bits of Ukraine they already hold. Now, here's the thing. Even if they agreed to freeze the lines on a long-term basis as part of a peace deal, that would still be outrageous because you are giving a reward for invading. Like, okay, here's the thing. If you were to freeze the battle lines as they are now on a long-term peace deal, doesn't have to be permanent, but long-term peace deal, then Russia gets to keep all its gains. And then what happens if in 2 years' time Russia advances, breaks the peace deal? What happens then? Do we have another round of negotiations where it's like, okay, we'll let them have a bit more in turn for peace? Like, that's madness. Why would you do that? And the other thing Zelensky has said is, if they withdraw from that area, they're withdrawing from defensible areas. So they will not only be conceding more territory, they'll make it easier for Russia to form a spearhead into the rest of it later. It's utterly insane. You say most high-end condenser mics require 48 VPower. I've got it all. Honestly, I have been streaming for 10 years. Until the last year or so, completely hassle-free. Completely hassle-free. I do not skimp on these things because audio is really important. It's more important than visuals, right? And yeah, it's got to be the computer. It's a good computer as well, but obviously I've mucked up somewhere with the sound card or something. Actually, it's not going through a sound card. I really don't know what it is. Anyway, the only peace deal is the one cited in Tacitus, and to paraphrase, to make desolation and call it peace. Yeah. It's the peace of the grave. That's the peace Putin wants. He wants the land. He's not even necessarily that bothered about the people. I mean, yes, I'm sure he'd love to subjugate the people. But if the Ukrainians would all just like to commit seppuku overnight, he'd be delighted with that. He just wants the land, right? He wants the resources. That's what he wants. But anyway, there was something I saw here. And I can't find it now. I think it was from a military expert. Where did I see it? But I mean, essentially what it's saying is, I mean, Putin got everything he wanted. He got credibility on the world stage, massive amounts of credibility. He got to defer the because that's all he cares about, the sanctions. That's the only reason Putin needed to meet Trump. Because Trump's clearly not properly supporting Ukraine. It's because he's I can't find it now. There was quite a good comment I wanted to go over, but I wonder where it went. Never mind. Unbelievable. Mark, they're saying some of your recordings have good audio, some have lots of noise. So the recordings I do against the green screen will be absolutely fine because that's in my studio. The ones here, the problem is, so this computer, I mean, I always get good computers. It's not cheap. But for whatever reason, and I don't know why, I didn't get liquid cooling in it. So when it's hot, and it's hot, you can hear the fans probably. So anyway, oh, Chris saying, wasn't legal, just saying it might be a software issue. I honestly, I cannot. I've tried everything. Honestly, I've tried everything, and I've never had this issue before. I have new issues now as well. My mouse, all of a sudden, this will be a software issue because the mouse hasn't physically changed. It keeps double clicking when I'm only clicking. I've even gone into the settings and reduced the speed of the double click. It's not that, it's something else. And I'll bet it's something with AI. But then it does it in everything. It's actually doing it in everything, not just like... Anyway, I hate technology a lot of the time. I rely on it, but I hate it. Did this mic problem start when you got Windows 11? That's the problem, I can't tell. Now, this is the first computer I got with Windows 11. So I honestly couldn't tell you when it started. So it might have been. I have thought that myself. Because it can't be the hardware as such, because the hardware is all top quality. But anyway, SFAX there. It says, since independence, education was mostly in Ukrainian, more or less. People started switching to Ukrainian on a daily basis in numbers, first in 2014, larger numbers since 2022. I can imagine why. Yes. But that, I mean, what an amazing concession to give, though. You can speak your own language. Thanks very much. What a privilege. What a boon. What a boon. It sounds like the mag switch and the mouse is knackered. Possible. The only way to find out would be with a new mouse. Now, because the mouse is old, because you could be right, the mouse is old, I'd sent away for a new one, which arrived, and I opened it up and it's the wrong model. So I've got to send it back now. It was late. It was massively delayed. And then they sent the wrong one. So I'll have to try again. Anyway, have I tried Tech 101, turn it off and on again? So I've turned my computer on and off again probably hundreds of times since the issue started, which was about last year. Putin does not want a democratic, prosperous Ukraine on Russia's doorstep. Might give Russians food for thought. Why can't we have that? No, of course he doesn't. I mean, it is absolutely the case that what drove Putin to really go hard was the fact that he cannot stand to have another country on the Russian border, particularly a former country within the USSR. Because remember, Putin's never given up on that. You know, he was a sergeant, wasn't he? Or something. He was a military officer stationed in West Germany during the fall of the Berlin Wall. You know, he was there just spending all his time in cafes, sipping coffee, thinking life was great in communist Germany. And then all of a sudden it all collapsed around him and he was not a happy bunny. So he wants the Soviet Union back. He wants an expanded Soviet Union back. It's really that simple. And he gets a lot of confirmation bias. He will honestly believe that the West is weak. Of course he believes the West is weak. We've given him so much reason to think so. He can wrap the US president around his little finger. Europe just let him get away with so much. I mean, you know, the full-scale invasion in Ukraine in 2022 was not like out of the blue. It's not even like we go back to 2014 and the initial invasion of Ukraine. You go back even further to that. I mean, why were we trading with Russia? Why, you know, after it bombed the crap out of Chechnya, or why it was invading Georgia? So we're weak. We demonstrated to Putin we're weak. Why wouldn't he invade us? Why the hell wouldn't he invade us? Absolutely insane. I saw there's been some protests in America against the Republicans gerrymandering in Texas. And I saw one placard in the protest. It was a quote from Martin Luther King. I can't remember the exact words, but words to the effect of, you know, the oppressor does not give the oppressed freedom by choice. It has to be demanded by the oppressed. And it's the same thing here. You know, countries don't live peacefully side by side because they're terribly nice to each other. It's mutual interest. One country's behaviour towards another is dictated by what they see as the national interest. Now, some leaders are decent people, right? And they don't want to invade their neighbours or something like that. But some people are arseholes. And it's not uncommon for Russia, because Russia, you know, has this sort of attitude of enemies everywhere, doesn't it? I mean, to be fair, European powers have attempted to invade Russia on a number of occasions. You know, Napoleon and Hitler, two of the most famous European invaders of the last few hundred years, have both had a crack at it. So you can understand Russia's feeling vulnerable. I totally get that. But, you know, given that, and given the fact that their mindset is invade or be invaded, make sure you secure your pissing borders. Chris says, don't I mean East Germany? Sorry, if I said West Germany, yes, I would have meant East Germany, of course, indeed. Putin's also ex-KGB, yeah. Bet he doesn't want the communism back. from each according to their talents to each according to their needs. There's never been a communism. There's never been a communist country. There's been countries where maybe they tried, but there's never been a communist country. So no, he would love it back, because Soviet communism was brilliant. You had one person at the top, that'd be him. And, you know, obviously communism, in terms of communist countries as they actually exist, they're really feudal systems. They're entirely feudal. You have a king. They're not called a king. They're called party chairman or something, right? But they're the king. And then they're surrounded by their barons. So they're the senior echelons of the party, the one party you're allowed, in which case it's not a party, is it? It's not a political party. There's only one of them. And everyone else is a serf. It's a feudal system. It's a medieval feudal system. That's what it is. No such thing. And this is the thing, like, you know, and it's because of that. It's because communist states always turn into fascist dictatorships. That obviously communism gets a bad name, because wherever you see a country that claims to be a communist state, you see massive corruption and oppression. Who would want that? No one would want it. No one would want that. So yeah, communism gets a bad name, but communism's a lovely concept. It's really lovely. It's like, can't we all get on with each other? Can't everyone be equal? Everyone's treated equally, right? But it's not compatible with human nature. It's like pacifism. It's a lovely idea. It doesn't work, because all you need is one arsehole who goes, well, I'm going to smash you over the head with this bat. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. Oh, great. I'll just smash you over the head with the bat then. And there you go. So you can't have communism. Whereas you also don't want free market capitalism, because it creates exactly the same scenario. Free market capitalism creates the same scenario. You know, an effective feudal system where the people born into wealth have the power, and they elect amongst themselves someone to lead the country, a pirate king. It's the same thing. You know, the extreme right and the extreme left really are the same thing. If you try and put it into practice, it's the same. So what you need is a nice mix. You have to accept that people like to own things. You have to accept that people want to be rewarded for doing better. So, you know, you sort of, if you want someone to train harder and learn new skills and get better at their job, they'd expect more reward for it. People want rewards, right? So you take that part of capitalism and then you regulate the hell out of it. So you have a mix of left and right. Heavily regulated private sector, and get the state to control what cannot work with profit. Anyway, Cara, they're saying, but what does Starmer want? Is he hoping that by keeping Trump on side, we keep him happy? Essentially, yes. So imagine the scenario, right? Imagine the scenario if we basically say Trump's a lost, which a lot of people wanted to do many months ago, and I totally got it. I didn't think we could get Trump back on side. But imagine the scenario: you give up Trump as a dead loss. You just say, that's it. We can't get anything out of him. So immediately then, so you're not including him in your games, your pack, your playground group, whatever. And what does Trump do then? First of all, he starts removing the sanctions on Russia. So although Trump is not tightening the sanctions on Russia, there isn't a suggestion as yet that he's loosening them either. But he would do, right? Because if he's going to be frozen out, if the only person flattering him is Putin, he likes the flattery, right? That's what the problem was during Trump's first term. Putin flattered the hell out of him, you know, absolutely flattered the hell out of him. European leaders were telling him he was an idiot. Didn't work very well. Didn't work out great. So you flatter the hell out of him. Putin would be the only one doing that. So Trump would just then unilaterally ease sanctions on Russia, start to get trade moving between them. It'd have to be between the east of Russia and the west of America, of course. And then he'd be more adversarial with Europe as well. That just makes everything worse. That just makes everything worse. Politics circular, not linear. So I'm not sure about that, because if you write down the principles of the extreme left and the principles of the extreme right, they are different. They are very different. But in practice, they're the same. There's no difference between, like, if you look at China, China's supposed to be a communist state. Is it? I would say it's an extreme right-wing state, wouldn't you? It's got billionaires. It's got one person at the top who gains his position not from the people. It's got no mandate from the people. Call it the People's Party all you like. It's not a mandate from the people. The China's president gets their mandate from the barons, the senior people, the senior members of the party. But anyway, oh yes, Orwell there. All animals are equal. Some animals are more equal than others. Yes. But yeah, I wish I could find that comment. But what it was basically saying is Europe's obviously what I was saying last week is let's just hope that Trump doesn't go all the way back to February. It was always going to be, as soon as it was clear that Putin would be speaking to Trump on their own for any length of time, at that point you thought, God almighty. This is what the BBC have said about it. I'll just put it up there. Trump wanted to walk out of the summit with agreement from Putin on a ceasefire, the same demand he's made of him since March. He didn't get it. He says he got progress, but would not say what or how. So as the war's architect Putin got on, because Putin knows what he's talking. Trump's an idiot with diminishing mental faculties, and he has no strategic understanding. Putin he's been trained in strategy for years. He's been an effective strategist for decades. And he's clever. He's everything Trump isn't, other than a megalomaniacal arsehole. Anyway, Putin got an effective American embrace, a red carpet welcome, presidential applause, which is insane. Trump in return got nothing to present as a tangible achievement. The summit then amounts to a clear win for Putin. The Russian president also used the moment to warn the Europeans not to throw a wrench into his ties with Trump. Yeah, they're going to throw a massive wrench in, mate. Because here's the thing. Again, you've got to be careful with Trump. You can't go in feet first. But here's the reality of the situation. What can Putin do for Trump? It can flatter him. It can tell him, yeah, Don, mate, the election was totally stolen from you. Absolutely, definitely, yeah, absolutely. Although I am going to say, do you know what? I wish he had bloody won now. I wish he had won. Because look what's happened. What is Trump's doing now in America, he wouldn't have done in 2021. He'd have just rode out another term, wouldn't he? And then we'd be rid of him. So I'm now actually thinking it would have been better. Am I wrong on this? Would it have just been better if Trump had a pissing won in 2020? Would that have been better? Because what they're doing now, this Project 2025, they spent 4 years working on it. Whereas if he'd have won the second term, we hopefully would be rid of him now. But I don't know. We will see. I suppose the problem there would have been he would then have been president when Russia did initially invade Ukraine, and maybe would have been completely buggered then. So I don't know. It's really hard. That's the problem with these things, isn't it? So many strands. Chaos theory. Kieran there saying, had the same thought about the 2020 election. Yeah, I've sometimes thought that. But again, it swings and roundabouts. It's not easy to tell. But either way, that's what Trump gets from Putin. He smooths his brow and says, yeah, they totally stole it from you, mate. And obviously European leaders are not prepared to do that. I don't know what they say to him behind closed doors, but publicly they're not gonna do that. So he don't get that from Europe. But I'll tell you what he does get from Europe. He gets more trade. A lot more trade. He can't possibly replicate that trade with Russia. It's not possible. And if Trump decided to really go in as a major opponent, if he actually decided to become Europe's enemy, it would do no sides any good. It's like a trade war. Both sides lose, but Europe would be able to make sure he loses. That's the thing. If Trump decided to just side with Russia against Europe properly, like explicitly, openly. Europe couldn't stop themselves being damaged from that, but we could make sure Trump is badly damaged. John there saying, Phil, I personally believe Vance could actually be worse than Trump. Trump is out for himself, but Vance is very much an isolationist, has a dislike for Europe. Yeah, it's quite bizarre that he spent his holiday here, isn't it? Unless he doesn't see, unless he's like a little Englander and he doesn't see Britain as part of Europe, maybe, I don't know. But no, don't get me wrong. I totally agree that as a president, Vance would be worse than Trump because Trump is susceptible. He's, flattering is susceptible to flattery. He's susceptible to flattery and personal gain. I totally get where you're coming from. But Vance isn't a cult leader. So Vance wouldn't get away with doing half the shit Trump's getting away with in America. I don't think so anyway. I agree. He's smarter than Trump. He's potentially more Machiavellian, or he could be. But I also think his power base would be on shaky ground. I mean, we may find out if Trump's brain actually does genuinely give up the ghost. I mean, I'm not an expert, but he's clearly in the advanced stages of something like dementia, right? I'm not a medic. And of course, anyone who's known anyone with dementia means that there's a certain point, and it can happen quite rapidly. There's a certain point where you cannot really have a rational conversation about anything. And I know you might say, if you ever listen to Trump, it's not exactly rational, but words come out of his mouth. Whereas you can get someone who's so far gone that they can't remember it. And if they'll ask a question, it's like, what are you on about? Who are you? If that starts to happen, they won't be able to keep him in place. If that starts to happen, they won't be able to keep him in place. So it is possible. People keep talking about, oh, maybe he'll have a heart attack or something. He won't have he won't. He'll be physically fit and healthy enough over the course of this term. But his brain could go. His brain could completely go very, very rapidly. That is possible. At which point they may well have to invalid him and appoint Vance as the president. Then we may find out. Vance self-aggrandizing but sneaky piece of work. Well, a lot of people are self-aggrandizing. There's a sense in which in politics you sort of have to be, even if you're not naturally inclined. But anyway. Oh, MZ saying there, of Mice and Men made an impact on my teen mind, plus Lord of the Flies. Yeah, we did that. Lord of the Flies. I remember, so we obviously read the book in English. They did the film of it, but in 2 parts. And I missed the second half of the film in the second lesson because I was at the dentist at the time. So I missed Piggy getting squished. And I never watched the film again. You don't need to watch a film. If you read a book, films of books are generally not great anyway. There's a few exceptions, not many. Why did Shady not go to Jeremy Clarkson's pub? Maybe he thought it was shit. Maybe that's what we should say to Clarkson. Oh, he wasn't allowed to eat his trout at the Bull. Why didn't you invite him to have one of your 200 quid pork pies, mate? Is it because your gaff's shit and he won't want to eat there? I mean, to be fair, actually, to be honest, maybe Jeremy Clarkson doesn't like JD Vance either. He's a funny one, Jeremy Clarkson. He doesn't quite fit in a box, does he? And I got it wrong, actually. I mean, I owed him an apology because I described him as a Brexiteer at one point. He's not. He's aggressively against everything, isn't he? But he's against Brexit. You wouldn't think so, would you? When you consider all of everything he says and does, you would think he's definitely a nailed-on Brexiter. And he's not. He thinks Brexit's ridiculous. He's not shy about saying so. Of course, he's not shy about saying so. He's from Yorkshire, same part of Yorkshire I come from. Diplomacy is not our thing. It's not our superpower. The only thing you have to do with Trump is be sure you're the last person he speaks to. Vance is much more of a plotter and planner. Invoke a 25th Amendment at your peril. I mean, they won't. Yeah, they won't. They'll just... but if his brain goes, they won't be able to keep him. If his brain actually just gives up the ghost. If all he's fit for is sitting in a corner dribbling. Won't be anything to be done. Because what will happen is, like, first of all, you can't hide him away because then people will go, what's happened to him? They'll just think Vance has killed him, right? So, because one of the strengths of the presidential office is these sort of constant meetings, press conferences in the Oval Office. I say Starmer should do the same thing in Downing Street. These constant press conferences in the Oval Office, so they're sort of informal, but it allows the president to set the news agenda, right? So Starmer should do that. But it does bite you on the arse if your brain goes. Because if they have to wheel him out and he's aggressive and he doesn't know who people are and people are asking questions, what the are you talking about? If he starts dropping F-bombs because his mind is actually genuinely snapped, then you can't carry on like that. So that's the hope. The hope isn't that the cheeseburgers do their work. It's that his brain just gives up the ghost. What are my thoughts on... I don't know this. What are my thoughts on the flasher on the train being given mob treatment? I've not come across that. Are you basically saying a load of people on the train stood up to them, which this should happen all the time? Do you know what? I'm just assuming. I've not actually seen the story, in all honesty. But one thing that always grieves me, you know, you'll particularly see it on a tube train in London. But it can happen on a train anywhere. But it's most common in London, I think, or certainly it's most reported in London. And you'll see someone usually racially abusing someone, but it might not be, but it's often racial abuse. And someone else records it, and then, you know, so that the police have got some evidence, and of course you can get them sacked if they've got a job, right? And what I always find horrendous when you watch these things is like, why is everyone stood around them doing nothing? Why is this person just free to racially abuse this person? No, I mean, okay, someone's recording it, good, they're doing something, but what about the rest? For goodness sake. It's a bit like, I think this was Leeds a few years ago. It's quite a few years ago now. I think it was Leeds Police did it. They did an experiment, right? Where they chained up a bike, you know, like you're doing the cycle things where you chain your bike in the middle of the town centre while you go shopping. But they deliberately chained up a bike. They got someone plainclothes, right, to go there, chain up a bike. Then they had another plainclothes officer come along, pretended to be a thief, and they removed the wheel and took off with the rest of the bike. Just to see if people would either stop them or at least report them. I mean, the police never advise that you try and stop a crime, because they might turn violent, right? So they never advise people to put themselves in danger, the members of the public in danger, but at least report it. And what they found is they almost never got any reports of it. People just don't, they just, like, even when they're seeing an obvious crime, and they made a meal of it apparently as well. There was no in 10 seconds gone. It was like making a proper meal of getting this wheel off and running away with the rest of the bike. So clearly stealing, looking suspicious as hell, and almost no one did anything. Not even reported it, not even got the phone out and said, hang on a minute, there's a fella just stolen a bike here. It's ridiculous. Oh, so London Underground train, man flashes in front of children and women. Men took it upon themselves to correct his behaviour. But good, I mean, things like that should happen. I did something like that once, you know. I actually did something like that with a flasher. So this was when I was at university in the late 90s in Manchester. So I was walking down to Iceland. Now where it was, picture the scene. So you're walking down, there's pavement and there's a petrol station. You walk past a petrol station. You know how petrol stations have that low wall? So it marks out their boundary, but it's not like you don't need a big wall. So it's just to mark out the boundary. So there's one of those little walls past the petrol station. And there's this fella there in a long coat, right? Bit scruffy. And in front of me, I would say about 15 metres in front of me are two women. So they walk past him, he flashes them. They obviously scream and whatever. And as I walked past him, I just pushed him over the wall. But it is ridiculous to me when you see someone being abusive and there's other people around them and they do nothing. I don't get that. You know, the way I was brought up, you don't say nothing. You know, the way I was brought up, you do not let people behave like that without doing something about it. But anyway, there we go. Anyone heard the one about the Geordie who scared the shit out of Londoners by greeting them? I think I've seen that one. Wasn't that a mock-up though? That wasn't actually real though, was it? Or was it? But anyway. Stephanie there saying, Phil, bike thieves use cutters to release the whole bike and no one notices. Yeah. No, but my point was that Leeds Police, I think it was Leeds Police. It could have been a different police force. I'm pretty sure it was Leeds though. It was somewhere in Yorkshire, I'm sure. And it was, but they just wanted to see if people would report crimes if they saw it, because maybe there'd been a spate of bicycle thefts and they were going, well, no one's reported it. What the hell? What are we supposed to go on if we haven't got a description of the person, right? So maybe they just wanted to check it out by, you know, doing it. And as I say, an actual bicycle thief will do it quickly, right? They'll do it quickly because they want to be away, right? Whereas this person was apparently making a meal of it just to make sure lots of people would definitely see they were stealing it. And still, no one ever stopped them. But also, which is fine, because it's not worth you getting hurt for someone's bicycle, right? It's just a bike. And you might put yourself in harm's way to protect someone, but not, you know, a bike. But at least ring the police. I mean, you've seen them. You've got a description. Ring the police. And hardly anyone did. But anyway, there was one on YouTube where they left a bike out to be nicked, but had undone all the nuts and bolts. When the thief tried to cycle away, it fell apart like a clown car. Oh, right. And recorded, presumably, as well. I'm not sure what I feel about things like that, because that's like a honey trap, isn't it, really? The police aren't allowed to do things like that, I don't think, are they? Because it's like inviting someone to commit a crime. You're not allowed to invite someone to commit a crime. I'm not sure if a member of the public is allowed to, though. Not sure. Quite a few London bus drivers are alarmed when you say good morning to them. They are. I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but I had someone, do you know, to me. So, because where I'm from, people will say hello to you. Will say good morning to you. I'm a miserable bastard. I often don't. But you know, if I'm walking down into town, I'm in a little town, so there's like a snicket I sometimes walk down, and you get dog walkers down there. They always say hello to you. People just say hello to you. And yeah, I don't, yeah, but it is a perception. I mean, I don't go to London often enough to really judge, like people's behaviour, because like I haven't been on a bus in London. I've been on the tube, but there's no one there to talk to. I mean, I know it's surrounded by people, but there's no one, you know, there's no one to say hello and thank you to. But anyway. Extrajudicial justice. Yeah, see, I mean, I'm a bit. I mean, people should stand up to someone whilst they're actually attacking someone verbally or physically. But yeah, I'm not into vigilantism. Urban Legend saying that's bollocks. I always say hello to bus drivers. Say hello to people. It's normal, and as far south as you can get. Well, I don't. Again, I can only go by. The stereotype, because I hardly ever go down south, but it is but people do say it is a thing, that people do not really like greet you in the south. I've had some people from the south suggest that they don't do it in the north either, so that's then basically admitting that it doesn't happen in the south. Maybe you're an unusual one, Urbane Legends. I got talking to an Italian guy on the underground. We were getting lots of funny looks. Is that because, see, for me, Italians and people from Nigeria tend to be very expressive when they're talking. Was it because of that? It was lots of hand movements, and there's not a lot of room on the tube, and it wasn't welcome. Is that what it was? Because That would be my, because they are, Italians are very, very expressive. Nigerians are very expressive as well when they're talking. Lots of hand movements, which is not common in this country. Anyway, where were we? I was trying to see what was happening here. I wish I could find that thing. I can't. It's gone. Just Northerners with their false sense of superiority. Is it false? Is it? I mean, I can't speak for the rest of the North, but Yorkshire's fairly superior in many ways. We get our own day. Do you know that? 1st of August is Yorkshire Day. There's no Essex Day, is there? You don't eat special Essex cake and cheese on Essex Day. It doesn't exist. Anyway, we don't do social commentary here. I'm not very good at it. Let's have a look what the BBC have got up here. So it says, while Vladimir Putin gave little indication of concessions or substantive negotiation here in Alaska yesterday, Donald Trump is acting like his Friday assurance that great progress had been made in the talks was more than post-meeting spin. Despite an exceedingly long day of travel and meetings, the American president had a lengthy late-night conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders from Air Force One on arrival in Washington. Now he's scheduled an in-person meeting with Zelenskyy at the White House on Monday. So that's the moment of danger, obviously. The last time Zelenskyy went to the White House, it was a disaster. So hopefully the same thing doesn't happen. Although it seemed unlikely after Trump and Putin departed Alaska following shorter than expected talks Friday afternoon, the White House still appears to believe that a trilateral meeting between Trump, Zelenskyy and Putin in the days ahead is a possibility. Well, we will see. But again, even that, everything is a danger at this point because Trump's attitude is absolutely key. Basically, Putin does not want peace under any circumstances. So the key is, are you able to persuade Trump that Putin is the barrier to it? Or is he going to be persuaded that Zelenskyy is the barrier to it? Zelenskyy should refuse to go to the White House. No, absolutely not. Because whenever we've gotten any progress with Trump, it's always been with a face-to-face meeting. Remember, although I say this is the first time Zelensky's been to the White House since February, it's not the first time he's met Trump since February. So remember, there was the Vatican meeting. That went well. So the... Pygmalion saying, I'm not false, I'm from Lancashire, the winning side of the Pennines. Are you really winning, though, these days? What did you win? Your cricket ground isn't even in the same county. You had part of your county ripped away from you. Manchester's not in Lancashire anymore. Whereas Yorkshire's still Yorkshire. Granted, it was rearranged, and a lot of people in Yorkshire didn't enjoy it being rearranged, but it's all still Yorkshire. Whereas Lancashire is no longer Lancashire. Lancashire is just like Little Lancashire now. So, you might have won the War of the Roses, but I'm not really sure what you did win. Anyway, it says here, that may hinge on whether Zelenskyy is willing to make a deal, as Trump said Friday evening, even if it's one that includes land concessions he has so far explicitly ruled out. See, yeah, Zelenskyy can't be trapped into agreeing something like that. I mean, there's now going to have to be a massive diplomatic effort with Trump from Europe. We'll just have to see. And again, I hope some of it is veiled threats. I go back, and I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but I go back to the fact that under normal circumstances, let's say Russia had never invaded Ukraine. Let's say Russia was just being Russia, but hadn't actually invaded Ukraine, right? If Donald Trump had have imposed 15% tariffs on the EU, I don't think the EU would have taken that. So we will the comment I was trying to find is, and it's quite a good one, Europe has to now decide, and very quickly, what it is prepared to do. How far is it prepared to support Ukraine? That's the key question. It's all right them talking about unwavering support for Ukraine. Keir Starmer says unwavering support for Ukraine. How unwavering? How unwavering? If Trump says Zelenskyy must concede some land in return for peace, and Ukraine says, because it won't be up to Zelenskyy, but Zelenskyy, I'm sure, will speak for the Ukrainian parliament in saying no. If that happens, how far do Europe support Ukraine? Do they risk having to tell Trump that that's an unacceptable condition, even if he thinks it is acceptable? How far is Europe prepared to effectively see a trade war with America over it? Because I'm not suggesting that would happen, but you could see how the dominoes could fall. So that's what has to happen here. Europe has to be very clear to each other, with one another. What are they prepared to do? How far are they prepared to back Ukraine? It would be lovely to think to the hilt, and that they would actually be prepared to trigger a trade war with Trump, to say to Trump, we're only swallowing these tariffs because you're supporting Ukraine. If you withdraw that support for Ukraine, and the whole of Ukraine, not a bit of it, if you withdraw that support for Ukraine, which, by the way, is not real support, he's not paying a penny for it. Europe is paying for Trump's support. They could say that to him. We are paying for your support. You don't have to do a blind thing. You don't have to do anything, mate. You just have to say the right things, and at the moment you're not doing. If you stop saying the right things, we're going to have to rethink whether we want to accept these 15% tariffs, because we're probably thinking no. Urbane Legend saying the answer to that is no, Phil. Oh, you'll have to say which question now, because I probably rabbited on a bit now. Sorry. I really don't understand the compulsion of some men to whip their tackle out in public. If you want strangers to see your tackle, just go to a nudie speech. I honestly couldn't tell you either. I mean, I know some people have mental health problems. I'm going to guess there's a mental health problem, but you still, you know, your reaction to it is not, oh, they've probably got mental health problems, poor thing. You know, your reaction is still, you can't do that, mate. Zelensky should speak to Trump through an interpreter this time around. Maybe he should learn to play golf a bit smartish. It was Alexander Stubbs, wasn't it, who played around. He's a golfer, wasn't he? Well, he still is at amateur level, but I think he was a proper golfer, wasn't he? So he bonded with Trump on the golf course. Of course, they had to play on the same side as each other. But there it is. As far as I'm aware, the European position is still that the recognised international borders must be restored. That includes the whole of Luhansk, Donetsk and Crimea returned to Ukraine. Yes, that is indeed the position. You are correct. Does it remain the position? That's what's not known. Again, it's lovely to think that Europe will recognise the long-term, again, that they will recognise the long-term damage if Putin is allowed a few years of peace, not for Ukraine, because a peace deal won't be peace for Ukraine. It will be peace for Putin to rebuild his military. Remember, he thought he'd modernised the Russian military. It turned out the people he'd given the money to were spending it on mansions and super yachts because he thought, well, we don't really need tanks. What do we need tanks for? To invade, you fool. So it might be that Putin would like the time to fully rearm, remodernise, and go again in a couple of years. So Europe needs to be really, really clear on this one, because it can't afford to look divided. Obviously, the first play will be to get Trump to accept that Zelensky cannot concede land. You can agree to a ceasefire whilst Russia is in Ukraine, but you cannot agree that Russia keeps land. And you certainly can't agree that Russia takes land it doesn't even have right now. That is Europe's first play, obviously. That is their first play, to get Trump to see that. If they can't see it, we will have to wait and see. Because I'm a cynical old so-and-so. We know that European leaders in the past have appeased Putin for the sake of stabilising the economy, because all governments need a stable economy to win the elections, right? I mean, that's the curse of democracy. You know, you need democracy, but there are downsides to it. A dictatorship doesn't have to worry about that. People have the memories of goldfish. I mean, mention Chamberlain, and no one has any idea of who you mean. No, well, this is the problem. Even more recently, we've had appeasement more recently. We've appeased Putin. Why did we ever let him take you Crimea and keep it? Why? Should never have done it. Europe should go all in on military support for Ukraine, maybe even troops on the ground. So there is already talk of that. The problem is we don't have them. Honestly, Europe had one thing Trump said that's absolutely true. Europe became too dependent on the United States. It was a great deal. It meant, obviously, no one likes spending. After the Cold War, a lot of European countries massively reduced the amount they spent on defence to spend on other things. The last Labour government, one of the reasons why Labour were able to spend so much was not because they found a magic money tree to shake, because they were scaling down defence spending post-Cold War. So the Conservatives began it, Labour carried it on. It freed up loads of money. The economy was booming because obviously you bet trade's better post-Cold War. Post-breakup of the Soviet Union, trade was better. People from the old Soviet Union were getting better trade, better standard of living, more money. They were becoming consumers, right? Better for trade for everyone, better for everyone. So we had loads of money coming in. Now we've got to do the opposite, but without doing the opposite. So now we've got to boost defence spending while somehow not taking away all the money that we need for other things as well. That's the problem we've got. So what we don't have in Europe is the capacity to supply. So someone said there, Europe sent 1 million shells to Ukraine. I'm not sure if that is all in one group or over yet. I don't think it will be all in one group. We don't have, America can churn out munitions. We don't have that capacity in Europe. We need to build it up, but at the moment we don't have the capacity to churn out munitions at the same rate they're being consumed in an actual war. That's the problem. Making things, Russia is churning stuff out now. America does it anyway because it just sells them all over the world. We don't. There's also American equipment like Patriot missile systems. People, when I've mentioned this before, there's some people that have said, oh, but we've got this system, this Italian system or something. It's like, no one really thinks that that's an adequate replacement. So Europe doesn't actually have all of the equivalent military equipment. So some of the stuff Ukraine needs to defend itself is only made in America. So we do need to become self-sufficient in defence. There is hopefully now agreement amongst Europe that we have to do this, but it will take years to do it. We can't do it like anything else. It's like anything else. You cannot do these things overnight. You cannot just build infrastructure overnight. Even if you had the money. Even if you had the money, you can't do it. So I think the idea is we are still dependent on we got ourselves into a situation where we're dependent on the US. We're still dependent on the US. So this is an almighty mess now for Europe. They really didn't want this meeting to go ahead. It was a stupid meeting. Utterly ridiculous. But anyway, the view after the Cold War was that we would 2 years warning of a small war and 10 years of a large war, queried in the briefing when that had ever been the case. You could argue we had plenty of warning. Didn't we have plenty of warning? Wasn't Putin bombing the shit out of Chechnya a bit of a warning? Why didn't people think that was a warning? I'm going to suggest we had plenty of warning. Don't you think we had plenty of warning? I think we had plenty of warning. I think we even had plenty of warning in Ukraine. They invaded it in 2014. People behave as if they invaded it in 2022. They invaded it in 2014. So that was 8 years before the full invasion. Was not annexing Crimea a bit of a hint as to what was going to come? Was that not a hint? I would have thought that was a hint. I don't know about anyone else. So I think we've had plenty of warning. Just people didn't heed the warnings. We as we always do, we waited until catastrophe before going, right, we need to do something now. We always do it. Human beings do it all the time. We do it all the time. I've actually started a video on this. I might do it for tomorrow if I can finish it off. We just wait for catastrophe. No one does anything. People keep saying in terms of rebuilding Britain, post-Tory Britain, well, Starmer should be like Attlee because we have got an emergency. This is like post-war reconstruction. And it's like, I totally get it, but most of the country don't agree. They don't think it's... Obviously, we just had a war. So after 1945, yeah, Attlee got away with a huge rebuilding programme. It didn't keep him in power, did it? But the public supported the rebuilding at least. Not enough to keep him in power for longer. But they still... because there was clearly an emergency. Buildings had fallen down, apart from anything else. Of course, we had to rebuild things. Whereas people don't see that now. Honestly, people never do anything until we've... They never do anything when catastrophe is on the horizon. It'll be like, cheer up, may never happen. Even when it's coming straight towards you. We always have to wait until the calamity has actually happened before we go, oh, we should do something, which is so stupid. It's always easier to deal with something as early as possible than wait till it's too late. Anyway, that's my rant on that. Last couple of comments, then we'll sort of run out of time. Putin's writings were all about getting back to the Russian Empire. He's written his equivalent of Mein Kampf. We've known for about 15 years. Of course we have. He's not even shy about it. He's not even been shy about it. You know, and we knew anyway. Boris Yeltsin, do you remember that brief period of democracy with Boris Yeltsin? I know he wasn't the greatest president, but he was at least democratic, at least wanted a thawing of relations with the West, right? He was a reasonable person. He was mad drunk, but, you know, Russian. A Russian who grew up in the Cold War. Of course, he was drunk 24/7. But he begged the West. He said, don't make us suffer. He says, you need to support us if you want democracy to take hold. He begged the West to help him get Russians to see the benefits of liberalisation of their society. And we didn't. So we've had no end of warnings. Boris Yeltsin warned us that Russia would slide back. Or backslide is the term, technically, isn't it? Russia would backslide if we didn't really go out of our way to help it. And we didn't. We didn't. But anyway, we'll call it there. Thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.